The bridge of the Horizon Dawn hummed with the quiet efficiency of a well-run ship. Captain Jake sat in his command chair, reviewing patrol reports from the outer rim. Nothing unusual had crossed their path in 3 weeks. Just empty space, distant stars, and the occasional comet drifting through the void. Lieutenant Amy Collins broke the silence. "Captain, I'm picking up something odd on the long-range sensors." Looked up from his define odd. "It's a signal, very weak but definitely artificial, not one of ours." Amy's fingers moved across her console, trying to clean up the interference. "The pattern suggests a distress call, but the language is completely unknown." Stood and walked to her station. "How far?" 4 light years, just beyond our patrol boundary." Amy pulled up a star chart on the main screen. "There's a system there, but we haven't mapped it yet. No registered colonies, human or otherwise." "Play it." The bridge speakers crackled with static, then a voice emerged. The words were incomprehensible, but the tone was unmistakable. Fear, desperation, pain. The message repeated 3 times, then cut off abruptly. Felt something cold settle in his chest. He had heard that tone before, back during the border wars. It was the sound of people who knew they were about to die. "How long ago was this sent?" he asked. Amy checked her readings. "Based on signal degradation, roughly 8 hours. Captain, if they're still alive, they won't be for long." "Can you translate it?" "Give me 20 minutes with the linguistics database. The pattern recognition software might find something." Nodded. "Do it. Commander Park, join me in my ready room. You have the bridge." Ensign Martinez straightened in his seat. "Yes, sir." Inside the ready room, Commander Lisa Park waited while poured himself a cup of coffee. She was his tactical officer, and one of the few people on the ship who could read his moods accurately. "You're thinking about responding," she said. It wasn't a question. "We don't know who they are, we don't know what they're running from, but someone out there is dying and we're close enough to do something about it." Took a sip of his coffee. "What's our tactical status?" "Full weapons, shields at maximum capacity. We just at Station 7, so we're good for an extended deployment. But Captain, if we cross that boundary, we're outside our jurisdiction. Command won't back us up if this goes wrong." "I know. And if we're walking into a war zone, we could be outnumbered or both." Met her eyes. "Would you ignore a distress call?" Lisa was quiet for a moment. "No, I wouldn't, but I'd want to know what I was getting into first." "Agreed. Let's see what Amy can tell us." 20 minutes later, they were back on the bridge. Amy had the translation ready. "It's rough, but I've got the basics," she said. "The species calls themselves they're under attack by something called the Dominion. Their colony world is being bombarded from orbit. They've lost their defensive platforms and their evacuation ships are destroyed." This was a general broadcast, sent to anyone who might be listening. "How many people are we talking about?" asked. The message mentions thousands of civilians, mostly families. They set up this colony 30 years ago as a peaceful settlement far from any major trade routes. Amy's expression was grim. "Captain, they're asking for help from anyone. They say they've been broadcasting for 6 hours. No one has responded." Looked at the star chart on the main screen. 4 light years. They could be there in 18 hours if they pushed the engines, but 18 hours might be too late. Amy scanned for any other ships in the area, anyone closer who might respond. She worked her console for several minutes. "Nothing, sir. We're the only ship within range." Turned to his crew. They were all watching him, waiting for the order. He saw Young at the tactical station, barely 23 years old. He saw Lisa, who had 3 kids back on Earth. He saw Dr. Vincent Hayes standing near the medical bay entrance, his face drawn with concern. They all knew what he was about to say. They knew the risks, but they also knew why they had joined the fleet. It wasn't just to patrol empty space. It was to represent humanity out here in the dark where nobody was watching. "Lisa, plot a course to the system. Maximum speed." "Yes, sir." "Run combat drills. I want all weapons systems ready for engagement. If they are still there when we arrive, we might need to fight our way through." "Understood, Captain." "Vincent, prepare medical for mass casualties, both ours and theirs." The doctor nodded, already on it. Returned to his command chair. The ship's engines shifted pitch as they came about, changing course toward the unknown system. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, preparing for whatever waited ahead. Amy looked back at him. Sir, what if we're not enough? What if they have a full battle fleet? Then we'll buy the time to evacuate. We'll draw fire. We'll do whatever it takes. His voice was calm, but there was iron underneath. Amy, send a message back to command. Tell them what we're doing and why. If we don't make it, at least they'll know there are people out here who need help. And if command orders us to stand down, we're 18 hours away. By the time they get the message and respond, we'll already be committed. Allowed himself a slight smile. Sometimes it's easier to ask forgiveness than permission. Lisa activated the stars stretched into lines as the horizon dawn jumped to faster-than-light speed. They were committed now. There was no turning back. Thought about Earth. He had grown up in the mountains of Colorado, where winter could kill you if you weren't careful, where wild animals still hunted in the forests, and nature didn't care if you were strong or weak. Earth had taught humanity to survive. It had taught them to adapt. And most importantly, it had taught them to protect each other, because that was the only way to make it through the long nights. They didn't know it yet, but help was coming. It might not be the help they expected. It might not even be enough. But humanity had heard their call, and humans didn't abandon people in need. That was the way. The Horizon Dawn raced through the void, carrying its crew toward battle. In the quiet of the bridge, pulled up the translated message one more time. He listened to the fear in that alien voice, and he made a promise to people he had never met. Hold on, we're coming. The Horizon Dawn dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. What they saw made its blood run cold. 3 massive warships hung in orbit around a blue-green planet. They were dark, angular vessels covered in weapon ports. Even from this distance, could see the scorch marks on the planet's surface where orbital strikes had hit. Atmosphere was venting from several locations, visible as thin streams of vapor escaping into space. Those are ships, Lisa said, pulling up tactical data. Each one is twice our size, heavy armor, plasma cannons, and missile batteries. Captain, they outgun us 3-1. Studied the enemy vessels. They were positioned in a standard bombardment formation, spread out to maximize coverage of the planet below. Whoever commanded that fleet was confident, comfortable. They weren't expecting anyone to challenge them. That was about to change. Get me a firing solution on the nearest ship. Target their engines and weapon systems. Sir, if we engage, they'll know we're here, said, his hands already moving across the tactical console. They'll know anyway. Amy, any sign of defenses? Amy shook her head. Nothing active. I'm detecting wreckage in orbit. Looks like they had some defensive platforms, but they're all destroyed. There are also debris fields that match evacuation ship profiles. They tried to run, but they stopped them. Felt anger building in his chest, but he kept his voice level. How long have they been bombing? Based on the damage pattern, at least 10 hours. Captain, there are still life signs on the surface. Thousands of them. They're hiding in underground shelters, but those won't hold forever. Then we don't have time for a long engagement. Lisa, here's what we're going to do. Outlined his plan quickly. It was aggressive, maybe even reckless. But humans hadn't survived Earth by playing it safe. They had survived by being faster, meaner, and more willing to take risks than anything else on their planet. Helm, take us in fast. Full speed, straight at the nearest ship. Hold fire until we're at point-blank range. The crew exchanged glances. Point-blank range in space combat meant close enough that both ships would take damage from the engagement. It was the kind of tactic that only made sense if you were desperate or crazy. Or if you were from and had nothing to lose. The Horizon Dawn accelerated toward the formation. Watched the distance counter tick down. 5,000 kilometers, 4,000, 3,000. The ships finally noticed them. Warning lights flashed on the tactical display as the alien vessels began to turn, bringing their weapons to bear. They're hailing us, Amy said. Ignore it, fire everything. The Horizon Dawn opened up at 1,500 kilometers. Rail guns spat streams of projectiles at near-light speed. Missiles launched in waves, their engines burning bright against the darkness. Energy weapons lanced out, targeting specific points on the hull. The human ship didn't fire in the careful, measured way most civilized species preferred. They fired like they meant to destroy everything in front of them as quickly as possible. The nearest warship staggered under the assault. Its shields flickered and died. Armor plating cracked. One of its main engines exploded in a cascade of blue fire. Brake left full evasive, ordered. The Horizon Dawn rolled hard, dodging return fire from the other two ships. Plasma bolts seared through the space where they had been seconds before. Launch fighters said, "You're up." In the hangar bay, Pilot Stone climbed into his fighter. He had flown combat missions during the border wars back when humanity was fighting itself. This was different. This was first contact with an alien species, and they were doing it with guns blazing. He loved every second of it. "Delta Squadron, follow my lead. We're going to make these bastards regret waking up this morning." 12 human fighters launched from the Horizon Dawn and scattered into the combat zone. They moved in ways that made the pilots struggle to track them. Tight turns that would crush most species under the G-forces. Sudden accelerations that pushed human bodies to their limits. Locked onto a weapons battery and fired. His missiles struck true, silencing one of the plasma cannons that had been targeting the Horizon Dawn. "That's for the people you killed down there," he muttered. The battle became chaos. The ships were powerful, but they were built for overwhelming weaker opponents. They weren't designed to fight an enemy that refused to stay still, that attacked from unexpected angles, that seemed to have no sense of self-preservation. Watched his tactical display. The damaged ship was listing badly, venting atmosphere. The other two were trying to coordinate their fire, but the human fighters kept disrupting their targeting solutions. "Lisa, target the command ship. Full spread all forward batteries." "That's a lot of our ammunition, sir." "We won't need it if we don't survive the next 5 minutes. Fire." The Horizon Dawn's main guns thundered. Heavy projectiles slammed into the command ship's bridge section. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire front of the vessel erupted in fire as something critical was hit. "They're retreating," said, surprise clear in his voice. "The remaining ships are breaking orbit." Watched as the 2 operational warships turned away from the planet. They accelerated hard, jumping to faster-than-light speed within minutes. They left their damaged companion behind, dead in space. "Should we pursue?" Lisa asked. "No, our priority is the planet. Amy, try to establish communication with let them know we're here to help." It took several minutes, but finally a response came through. The voice was thin, exhausted, speaking in broken, standard that the translation software could barely process. "You came, someone actually came." Felt something tighten in his chest. "This is Captain Jake of the human vessel Horizon Dawn. We received your distress call. What's your situation down there?" "I am Elder. I speak for the survivors of Prime Colony. We have 4,000 people in the shelters, wounded, frightened. The bombardment destroyed our cities. We thought we would all die here." "You're not going to die. We're sending down medical teams and supplies. How many wounded?" "Too many. Our medical facilities are gone. We've been treating people with whatever we could salvage." "Hold on, help is coming." Turn to Dr. Vincent Hayes. "Take a team down. Bring everything we've got. I don't care if it empties our medical bay." Vincent nodded. "We'll need security. If they come back while we're on the surface, we'll be vulnerable." "I'm sending Marines with you. Land your squadron near their main shelter. Provide air cover." 20 minutes later, 3 human shuttles touched down on Prime. The landing zone was surrounded by rubble. Buildings that had stood for decades were now collapsed ruins. Smoke rose from a dozen fires across the visible landscape. They emerged slowly from their shelters. They were tall, slender beings with pale blue skin and large eyes. They moved with a grace that spoke of a low gravity. When they saw the humans, they stopped. Humans were shorter, thicker, with muscles designed for Earth's heavy gravity. They carried weapons openly and moved with a predatory confidence that made them instinctively step back. Elder approached Vincent Hayes carefully. She was old, her skin marked with age, but her eyes were sharp. "You are human?" she asked in halting standard. "We are. My name is Vincent. I'm a doctor. Please show me you're wounded." Led them into the shelter. The conditions inside were worse than Vincent had imagined. Hundreds of lay on makeshift beds, suffering from burns, crush injuries, and radiation sickness. The air smelled of blood and fear. His medical team spread out immediately, triage training taking over. "We need plasma for transfusions," one medic called out. "I don't know if our blood will work with theirs," Vincent said. "Amy, we need genetic compatibility data fast." Back on the Horizon Dawn, Amy was already running the analysis. "Doctor, you're in luck. The biochemistry is similar enough. We can use modified human plasma as a base, sending the formula to your medical scanners now." Vincent went to work. He moved from patient to patient, treating injuries that would have killed them without intervention. His team worked alongside him, exhausted but determined. Watched in amazement. "Why did you come? You don't know us. This isn't your fight." Vincent looked up from the child he was treating. "Because you needed help, that's reason enough. But the will return. They don't give up easily. Then we'll be ready." On the bridge, stared at the tactical display. They would come back, probably with more ships. His crew had bought the time, but the real battle was still ahead. He thought about what Vincent had said too, simple words, but they carried the weight of humanity's entire philosophy. You help because it's needed. You fight because it's right. You don't calculate the odds or worry about the cost. You just do it. Opened a channel to the entire ship. "All hands, this is the captain. We want to fight today, but the war isn't over. We're here now. They'll bring friends. So we're going to dig in, fortify this planet, and make sure when they come back, they find out what happens when you pick a fight with humans. Out." The crew responded with grim determination. They knew what was coming, but they also knew they had already accomplished something remarkable. They had answered a call for help. They had saved lives. And they had shown an alien species that humanity, for all its faults, would stand between the innocent and those who would harm them. That was worth fighting for. That was worth dying for if it came to that. The returned 3 days later with 7 warships. Saw them drop out of faster-than-light travel at the system's edge. His gut told him this was going to be bad. 7 ships meant they were taking this seriously. They weren't here to bomb a defenseless colony anymore. They were here to punish anyone who had dared to interfere. "All hands battle stations," he said calmly. "This is not a drill." The bridge came alive with activity. Lisa coordinated defensive positions, brought weapons online. Amy monitored enemy communications, trying to get any advance warning of their tactics. On the planet's surface, Sergeant Cross was organizing the defense. She stood in what used to be the colony's main square, now converted into a fortified position. Civilians worked alongside human Marines, building barriers from rubble and setting up firing positions. "Put the heavy guns on the high ground," ordered. "I want overlapping fields of fire. When they land, we turn this square into a kill zone." A young male approached her nervously. His name was, and he had volunteered to fight despite having no military training. "Sergeant, will we really be able to stop them?" he asked. Checked her rifle, making sure the magazine was full. "Kid, I'm going to be honest with you. They are better armed, better trained, and there's more of them, but they've never fought humans before. They've never fought people from a world that tried to kill them every single day. We know how to survive. That gives us an edge." "What kind of edge?" "The kind that means we're meaner than they are." Engineer Gary was in a makeshift workshop, surrounded by scavenged technology and human tools. He had spent the last 3 days studying the debris from the damaged ship. Now he was putting that knowledge to work. "Okay, so armor is tough," he muttered to himself, "but it's designed to stop energy weapons and high-velocity projectiles. What if we go low-tech?" He pulled out and started sketching, built from power cells, explosive traps triggered by proximity sensors, even some old-fashioned pitfall traps covered with debris that would be expecting a high-tech defense. Gary was going to give them something their scanners couldn't detect. Back on the horizon, Dawn studied the tactical display. The 7 ships were moving into formation, surrounding the planet. They were being careful this time, staying out of close range. "They learned from last time," Lisa said. "They're not going to let us get close enough for a surprise attack." "Then we need a new plan." Zoomed in on the enemy flagship. It was larger than the others, bristling with weapons. That would be where the commander was. "Amy, can you hack their communications?" "Already on it. Their encryption is tough, but I'm getting fragments. Wait, I'm picking up an incoming transmission. They're hailing us directly." "Put it through." The flickered and appeared. He was massive, easily 8 feet tall, with dark scales and eyes that glowed a faint red. 4 arms moved with precise coordination. His bearing screamed military authority. "I am commander of the Dominion. You are the humans who attacked our forces." "Stood, I'm Captain Jake. We didn't attack your forces. We defended innocent people you were murdering from orbit." They refused to submit to Dominion authority. They chose their fate. They chose freedom. You chose genocide, there's a difference. Tilted his head slightly, as if considering an interesting insect. Your species is unknown to us. You fight well for primitives, but you are alone, outnumbered, and outmatched. Leave now, and I will allow you to depart in peace. Remain, and you will die with the prey you protect. Felt his jaw tighten. He had dealt with bullies before, both human and apparently alien. They all spoke the same language, thinking overwhelming force made them right. Commander, let me explain something about humans. We come from a world that spent millions of years trying to kill us. Predators, diseases, whether other humans, we're still here. So when you threaten us, when you threaten people we've decided to protect, you're not scaring us, you're just making us angry. Anger is not a strategy. No, but it's good motivation. Here's my answer to your offer. You want this colony, you'll have to go through us. And I promise you, that's going to cost you more than you're willing to pay. Size narrowed. You choose death then, so be it. The transmission ended. Lisa looked at, that went well. He needed to understand we're not backing down. Now he'll commit fully, which means he'll make mistakes. Turn 2. When they launch their ground assault, I want you to focus fire on their landing craft. Make them pay for every soldier they put on the surface. Yes, sir. Take your squadron and hit their supply ships. They can't fight if they can't refuel. On the planet, watch the sky darken with incoming. There were dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Far more than her small force could stop through conventional means. Good thing they weren't planning to be conventional. Everyone hold fire until they land, she said over the comm. Let them think the square is undefended. The touch down, their ramps lowering. Soldiers emerged in tight formations. They were professional, moving with the confidence of troops who had conquered dozens of worlds. They made it 10 steps before Gary's traps activated. Explosions ripped through the square. Soldiers were thrown into the air. The neat formations dissolved into chaos. That's when gave the order to fire. Human Marines and armed opened up from concealed positions. They didn't aim for body shots. They aimed for joints, for weak points in the armor, for anything that would slow the enemy down. A commander roared orders, trying to organize his troops, shot him through the throat. Leadership was always the first target. Take out the officers, and even the best soldiers became confused. Fall back to secondary positions, she ordered. Make them chase us into the next trap. The battle became a running fight through the colony ruins. Every street corner became an ambush. Every building became a sniper nest. They had superior numbers and firepower, but the humans knew the terrain. They used it ruthlessly. In space led his squadron against the supply vessels. They were lightly defended, meant to stay behind the main battle line. His fighters tore through them like wolves through sheep. Fox 3, target the fuel carriers, said, launching missiles. Let's see how they like running on empty. The supply ships exploded in brilliant fireballs. The fleet would now have to be more conservative with their ammunition and fuel. Every shot would count. On the horizon, Dawn coordinated the defense from orbit. He watched as landing craft tried to reinforce their ground troops, only to be shot down by concentrated fire. He saw his crew working beyond exhaustion, but never slowing down. Captain, the flagship is moving, Lisa said. They're targeting our position. Let them come, prepare to engage. The two ships traded fire at medium range. The flagship's weapons were more powerful, but the Horizon Dawn was faster, harder to hit. Used that advantage, keeping his ship moving, never staying in one place long enough for them to get a solid lock. We can't keep this up forever, Lisa warned. Our shields are at 60%. We don't need forever. We just need to hold until they realize this isn't worth it. On the surface, force had taken casualties. 3 Marines down, 7 wounded, dozens of fighters killed, but they had inflicted 10 times that number on the alien soldiers were learning a harsh lesson about fighting. One squad cornered a group of civilians in a collapsed building. The squad leader raised his weapon, preparing to execute them. Came out of nowhere, moving faster than the heavy could react. She put 3 rounds into his skull at point-blank range, then turned her rifle on his squad. The other tried to bring their weapons around, but she was already rolling behind cover, grenades flying through the air. The explosions left only silence. Help the civilians up. A mother clutched her child, staring at with a mixture of terror and gratitude. Thank you, she whispered in broken standard. Get to the shelters, move fast, stay low. As the civilians fled, checked her ammunition. She was running low. They all were. If they kept pushing, eventually human determination wouldn't be enough. But then something changed. Amy's voice came through on all channels. Captain, the fleet is pulling back. They're withdrawing to the system's edge. Couldn't believe it. Confirm that. Confirmed, all ground forces are being recalled. They're breaking off the attack. On the surface, watched as swooped down to extract their troops. The aliens were retreating, leaving their dead behind. She had seen retreats before, but never one this organized. This wasn't panic. This was a tactical withdrawal. They were leaving because they had calculated the cost of victory and decided it was too high. Opened a channel to flagship. Commander, reconsidering your position. His face appeared on the screen. For the first time, saw something other than arrogance in those eyes. Respect, maybe, or fear. You fight like devils, said. The Dominion will remember this. I hope you do. Remember that humans don't start fights, but we finish them. Remember that we protect those who can't protect themselves. And remember that if you come back here, we'll be waiting. The transmission ended. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving the system empty except for the Horizon Dawn and one very damaged colony world. Sat down heavily in the rubble, exhausted. Around her, human and fighters were checking their wounded, counting their dead. They had won, but the cost had been high. Gary found her there, medical kit in hand. Let me see that arm. She looked down. Her left arm was bleeding from shrapnel she hadn't even noticed taking. Just a scratch. You're bleeding all over the place. Hold still. As he worked, she looked up at the sky. Somewhere up there, the Horizon Dawn was still keeping watch, still protecting them. She thought about what it told, we don't start fights, but we finish them. That was true, but there was more to it than that. Humans fought because they had learned to survive a world that didn't care if they lived or died. They protected others because Earth had taught them that survival meant working together. They would spread word about this battle. Other species would hear that humans had fought a superior force and won. Not through superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but through sheer determination and the willingness to pay whatever price was necessary. The galaxy was about to learn what it meant when decided to care. They came back 6 days later. This time they brought 15 ships. Stood on the bridge, staring at the tactical display with growing concern. They weren't just coming for revenge. They were coming to make a statement. This wasn't about the colony anymore. This was about making sure no one else in the galaxy got ideas about resisting the Dominion. They're not giving us time to evacuate, Lisa said quietly. Even if we started loading civilians now, we couldn't get them all out before they arrive. Then we don't evacuate, we fight. Pulled up a detailed scan of the enemy fleet. Amy, can you identify which ship is commanding? The largest one in the center of the formation. It's their command vessel. Heavy shielding, main plasma cannons, fighter bays. Captain, it's a fortress. Every fortress has a weak point. Find it. On the surface, was running on coffee, determination, and very little sleep. The last week had been spent training civilians in basic combat, setting up defensive positions, and trying to turn a ruined colony into something that could withstand another assault. Dr. Vincent Hayes worked beside her, treating wounded fighters and civilians alike. He had dark circles under his eyes and hands that trembled from exhaustion, but he never stopped. Every life saved was a victory. Sergeant, we need more medical supplies, he said, checking his inventory. We're running out of antibiotics and half these people are at risk of infection. I'll see what I can do, wiped sweat from her forehead. How many wounded can fight? None of them should fight. They should be in beds, recovering. Vincent's voice was sharp. But if you're asking how many will fight anyway, probably most of them. Nodded, that was the she had come to know. Peaceful by nature, but when you threatened their families, they found courage they didn't know they had. It reminded her of humans in a way. Elder approached them, moving carefully through the makeshift medical ward. She had aged 10 years in the last week, the stress wearing on her features. Sergeant Cross, how bad is it? They are coming with everything they've got, 15 ships. If they commit their full ground forces, we'll be outnumbered 50-1, maybe more. Then we cannot win. We can make them pay for it. His voice was hard. Every soldier who lands here won't leave, Every ship that enters orbit will take damage. We might not win, but we'll make sure to remember Prime for a long time. Touched shoulder. The gesture was gentle, but there was steel underneath. I have watched your people this week. You fight with such efficiency, such cold precision. But I have also seen your doctor crying over a child he could not save. I have seen your engineers teaching our young ones how to build things. You are not just warriors, you are protectors. We do what needs doing. Why, you could have left after the first battle. They would not have pursued you, but you stayed. Why? Thought about Earth. About growing up in Alaska where nature was beautiful and deadly in equal measure. About learning to hunt, to track, to survive in a place where weakness meant death. About the communities that formed in harsh places, where people protected each other because that was the only way to survive the winter. Because leaving would mean abandoning you to die. We don't do that. Made a decision that went against every tactical instinct he had. Instead of preparing a defensive position, he was going on the attack. They expected him to turtle up, to try and outlast the siege. He was going to do the opposite. Lisa, here's what we're going to do. We're taking the fight to flagship. Sir, that's suicide. It's bold, there's a difference. Pulled up a schematic of the command ship. Their fighter bays are here and here. Once we're inside, they can't use their main weapons without risking their own ship. We board them, take the fight to close quarters, and forced to call off the attack. Or we all die trying. That's a possibility. But if we sit here and let them grind us down, we die anyway. At least this way, we die making a difference. Lisa stared at the plan for a long moment. Then she smiled grimly. When do we leave? As soon as can prep the assault shuttles. We're taking 20 Marines, best close quarters fighters we have. The rest of the crew will provide covering fire and keep the other ships busy. Spoke up from Tactical. Captain, if you board that ship and fail, the Horizon Dawn won't last long without you coordinating our defense. Then don't let me fail. Keep those other ships off our backs. Amy, you'll have command of the bridge while I'm gone. Amy looked shocked. Sir, you should stay here. Send someone else to lead the boarding party. No, the crew needs to see their captain is willing to take the same risks they are. Besides, I was in Special Forces before I got this command. I know how to handle close quarters combat. He stood, checking his sidearm. It was an old-fashioned projectile weapon, the kind that had been used on Earth for centuries. In space combat, energy weapons were more common, but for boarding actions, nothing beat the reliability of a good rifle and sidearm. All right, people, let's give this something to think about. 2 hours later, sat in an assault shuttle with 19 other Marines. They were the best fighters on the ship, veterans of the border wars and various peacekeeping operations. Each one had volunteered for this mission knowing they might not come back. The shuttle bay doors opened, and they launched into space. Immediately, the fleet opened fire. Plasma bolts streaked past them. Missiles locked on and had to be evaded with violent maneuvers that threw everyone against their restraints. Stone flew like a man possessed, weaving through the defensive fire. Hold on, this is going to get rough. It's already rough, muttered, his stomach doing flips. They approached the flagship from below, using the planet as cover for as long as possible. The Horizon Dawn and its fighters were engaging the rest of the fleet, drawing fire away from the assault shuttle. Fighter bay is open, said. I'm taking us in 10 seconds. The shuttle shot through the energy barrier that kept the fighter bay pressurized and slammed down hard on the deck. The boarding ramp dropped before they had even fully stopped. Was first out, his rifle up. Soldiers were already moving to intercept them. He fired 3 shots, each one finding its target. They were tough, but humans aimed for weak points in their armor. Move, 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 he shouted. The Marines spread out, securing the hangar. Fighters tried to launch, but human soldiers threw grenades into their engines. Explosions ripped through the bay. Alarms wailed. Gary, you're up, said. Engineer Gary ran to a control panel, plugging in a device he had built from scavenged technology. Give me 2 minutes to hack their systems. I need their internal layout and location of the command center. You've got 1 minute. We don't have time for slow and careful. Slow and careful keeps us from triggering their security systems. Triggering their security might actually help. More chaos means more confusion, shot a soldier who was trying to flank them. 30 seconds, Gary. Done. Command center is 3 decks up, forward section. But Captain, their internal sensors just detected us. They know we're here. Then we move fast before they can organize a proper defense. The Marines moved through the ship like a storm. Soldiers tried to form defensive lines, but humans didn't fight in predictable patterns. They used grenades to flush enemies from cover, then rushed forward while they were still disoriented. Led from the front, his combat instincts taking over. He had trained for years to do this. Part of him had always wondered if he still had it. Now he knew. Age hadn't slowed him down. If anything, experience made him more efficient. They reached the command center to find it heavily defended. 20 soldiers in full combat armor positioned behind barricades. It was a kill zone designed to stop any boarding party. Flashbangs, then grenades, then we rush, ordered. Standard breach protocol. Sir, there's too many of them, one Marine said. Then we even the odds, primed a grenade. On my mark, 3, 2, 1 mark. The battle that followed was brutal and fast. Humans moved with practiced coordination, using fire and movement tactics that had been developed through centuries of warfare. There were skilled soldiers, but they had never fought an enemy that moved this fast, that was this willing to close to point-blank range. Shot an officer, then used the body as cover to reload. A soldier charged him with a blade, letting the alien's momentum carry him past, then shot him in the back. It was cold, efficient, exactly what was needed. The command center doors blew open, and his Marines stormed through to find standing in the center of the room, surrounded by the last of his guard. "You," said, genuine surprise in his voice. "You boarded my ship." Seemed like a good idea at the time. Kept his rifle trained on the commander. "Here's how this works. You call off your fleet, or I kill everyone in this room and take control of your ship myself." "You are bluffing. You cannot operate technology." "Maybe not, but I can set your reactor to overload. That work for you." Studied carefully. The human was bleeding from multiple wounds, his armor scorched and dented. But his eyes were steady, his hands didn't shake, and his finger was firm on the trigger. "You would die as well. If it means saving the people on that planet, yes. We call that acceptable losses." "Your species is insane." "No, we're from there's a difference. Now make your choice. Call off the attack or we both die here." Looked around at his bridge crew. They were waiting for his order, ready to fight. But he had seen what these humans could do. He had watched them tear through his ship's defenses like they were made of paper. Slowly, he lowered his weapon. "Stand down." "Wise choice," kept his rifle up. "Now order your fleet to leave the system, all of them, and if I ever hear about the attacking the again, I'll find you, personally." Gave the orders. The fleet began withdrawing, ship by ship, until only the flagship remained. "You have made an enemy of the entire Dominion today," said. "Add it to the list." Back toward the exit, his Marines covering him. "By the way, you fought well. Under different circumstances, we might have been allies." "Under different circumstances, we would not have met at all. Your species should have stayed hidden." "Maybe, but we didn't, and now the galaxy knows we're here." And his team made it back to their shuttle. As they flew back to the Horizon Dawn, he looked back at the flagship. It was already preparing to jump to faster-than-light speed. They had won. Against impossible odds, they had won. But knew this wasn't over. They would report back to their Dominion. Word would spread about the humans who boarded a flagship and fought their way to the command center. Other species would hear about the who refused to abandon people in need. Everything was about to change. 3 weeks after the last battle, Prime was starting to rebuild. The scars of war remained everywhere you looked. Collapsed buildings, scorched earth, makeshift graves for those who hadn't survived. But there were also signs of hope. Construction crews working to restore homes, gardens being planted, children playing in the streets again, their laughter a sound that had been absent for too long. Stood in the colony square, watching and human workers labor side by side. The two species had learned to communicate better now, finding common ground in shared struggle. It turned out that when you fought together, died together, and rebuilt together, differences in appearance didn't matter much. Elder approached him slowly. She looked healthier than she had weeks ago, though the weight of what her people had endured still showed in her eyes. "Captain, the memorial is complete. We would like you to attend the dedication ceremony." Nodded, of course. The memorial was a simple stone structure in the center of the square. Carved into it were the names of everyone who had died defending the colony. Human and names together, no distinction between them. At the top, a single line in both languages. They stood between the innocent and those who would harm them. The ceremony was quiet. No speeches, no grand gestures, just people standing in silence, remembering those who had given everything so others could live. When it was over, spoke privately with, "We wish to offer Earth a formal alliance. The people would be honored to call humanity our friends. We'd like that, but you should know what you're getting into. By allying with us, you might be painting a target on your back. They won't forget what happened here. Other species might see you as a threat by association. Let them, we were a peaceful people because we thought that was strength. We learned we were wrong. Peace is only strength when you have the ability to defend it. You taught us that." Felt something tight in his chest. "We didn't teach you to be violent." "No, you taught us to be strong. There's a difference." Touched the memorial stone gently. "These people died because we had no way to protect them. That will never happen again. We are building defenses, training soldiers, learning from your tactics. But we will never forget why you fight. Not for conquest, not for glory. You fight to protect." A human shuttle descended from orbit, landing near the square. Lieutenant Amy Collins emerged, looking urgent. "Captain, we're receiving multiple transmissions from Earth Command. Admiral Ford wants to speak with you immediately. Sir, something big is happening." Followed Amy back to the Horizon Dawn. On the bridge, the main showed Admiral Ford. She was a stern woman in her 60s, with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many wars. "Captain, I've been reading your reports. Quite the situation you've gotten yourself into." "Yes, ma'am. I take full responsibility for exceeding my authority." "Oh, you're definitely going to answer for that. But right now, we have bigger problems. Your little war with they has made headlines across the galaxy. We've received contact requests from 47 different species in the last week alone. Some want alliances, some want trade agreements, some want to make sure we're not planning to conquer them." Felt a chill. "Ma'am, we were just trying to save lives." "I know, but the galaxy doesn't see it that way. They see a species from an unknown world that defeated the Dominion in single combat. Do you understand what that means? They have been expanding unchecked for 2 centuries. Nobody could stop them until you did. We didn't defeat them. We just made them decide the cost wasn't worth it." "To most species, that's the same thing." Ford's expression softened slightly. "Captain, humanity is now on the galactic stage whether we wanted to be or not. Earth fleet is being restructured to handle diplomatic and defense responsibilities. We need experienced officers who understand how to deal with alien species." "With respect, Admiral, I'm not a diplomat." "No, you're something better. You're someone who knows when to fight and when to show mercy. The galaxy needs that right now." She paused. "We're getting distress calls, other species that heard about what you did at Prime. They're asking specifically for human help." Felt the weight of those words. This was what he had feared. Not that humanity would be rejected by the galaxy, but that they would be seen as the solution to everyone's problems. That kind of responsibility could crush them. "What are my orders, ma'am?" "Continue your patrol. Respond to distress calls as you see fit. But be careful, we can't save everyone. If we try, we'll lose ourselves in the process." "Understood." The transmission ended, sat in his command chair thinking about what came next. They had they had defeated but this was just the beginning. Amy pulled up a star chart showing the local sector. Dozens of systems, each one potentially hiding people who needed help, or threats that could destroy humanity if they weren't careful. "Captain, we're receiving another distress call. Different language than but the translation software is working on it." "What's the situation?" "Pirate raids on a mining colony. Civilian population requesting assistance. They say they've heard what we did at Prime and their hopping will help them too." Looked around the bridge. His crew was exhausted, their ship was running on spare parts and determination, and they had already taken losses that would require months to properly grieve. But they were also the Horizon Dawn. They had answered one call for help. How could they ignore another? "Lisa, plot a course. I want a full tactical assessment before we arrive. Amy, send a message back to the colony. Tell them help is on the way." "Yes, sir." As the ship turned toward the new coordinates, thought about Earth. About the billions of people back home who were just learning that aliens existed, that space was full of wonders and dangers, and that humanity had just announced its presence in the most dramatic way possible. He thought about what it said at the memorial. They stood between the innocent and those who would harm them. That was what humans did. not because they were the strongest but because they had learned on Earth that survival meant protecting each other. That lesson applied to the galaxy now. Across known space, news of the battle at Prime was spreading. In council chambers, military headquarters, and civilian forums, species discussed what it meant. Some saw opportunity, some saw threat, but everyone recognized that something fundamental had changed. The humans were here, and they weren't like other species. Commander stood before the Dominion's high command. He delivered his report with military precision, leaving nothing out. The high commanders listened in silence. "These humans," one of them finally said, "they fight like nothing we have encountered before." "They fight like they have nothing to lose," corrected. Every tactic, every movement was calculated for maximum damage with minimal regard for their own safety. They boarded my flagship with 20 soldiers and nearly took control of the entire ship. Recommendation: avoid conflict with humanity unless absolutely necessary. If conflict is unavoidable, overwhelming force from the start, do not give them time to adapt. Do not underestimate them. And never, ever assume they will surrender just because the odds are against them. The high commanders discussed among themselves. Finally, they made their decision. The Prime colony is declared off-limits. Any commander who engages human forces without authorization will be held accountable. We will observe this species from distance. If they prove to be a long-term threat, we will address it. But for now, we avoid direct confrontation. Felt something like relief. He had seen what humans could do. The idea of fighting an entire species like that was not appealing. On the Horizon Dawn, Dr. Vincent Hayes worked in the medical bay. He was treating Sergeant Cross for the injuries she had finally admitted to having. She sat on the examination table, trying not to wince as he cleaned a deep cut on her side. "You should have come to me days ago," Vincent said. "Been busy. You've been avoiding me because you knew I'd tell you to rest." "Can't rest, too much work to do." Vincent shook his head. "We won, thee are gone, thee are safe, you can take a break. Until the next distress call, until the next time someone needs help and we're the only ones close enough to respond." She met his eyes. "Doc, you know as well as I do that this is our life now. We're not just patrol anymore. We're the people the galaxy calls when everything else fails." "That's a heavy burden to carry." "Yeah, but somebody has to carry it." Vincent finished bandaging her wound. "For what it's worth, I'm glad it's us. I've seen what happens when good people do nothing. I'd rather be exhausted trying to help than well-rested knowing I could have made a difference." Smiled slightly. "That's the way, isn't it? We don't quit just because it's hard." "Apparently not." Stood on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. They seemed more crowded now, knowing that each one might hold intelligent life. Friends or enemies, people who needed help or people who wanted to harm them. Amy found him there. "Sir, the crew is asking what we're going to call ourselves. If we're responding to distress calls across the sector, we should probably have a title." "We have a title. We're the Horizon Dawn." "No, I mean our mission. They are calling us protectors. Some of the communications from other species are using the term guardians. But the captain of a merchant vessel we contacted yesterday called us something different." "What?" "Rangers, species that patrol the frontier, answering calls from those in danger, fighting threats that others can't or won't engage." Amy smiled. "It has a nice ring to it." "Considered that? Rangers, protectors, guardians, all different words for the same thing. People who stood between the innocent and danger. People who chose to fight not for glory or conquest, but because it was the right thing to do." "Tell the crew we don't need fancy titles. We know who we are and what we do. That's enough." "Yes, sir." The Horizon Dawn jumped to faster-than-light speed, heading toward another system, another call for help. Behind them, the colony continued to rebuild. Ahead of them, the unknown waited. But humanity had faced the unknown before. They had looked at a galaxy full of dangers and decided to explore it anyway. They had heard a call for help from strangers and decided to answer it. They had faced impossible odds and found a way to win. That was the way. Not because humans were the strongest or the most advanced, but because they had learned on a harsh world that survival meant never giving up, never abandoning those who needed help, and always fighting for what was right. The galaxy had sent an SOS. The had answered with cold efficiency. And they would keep answering, no matter how many times the call came, no matter what the cost. Because that was what it meant to be human,